Welcome to For Collectors.
Good evening, collectors. Welcome. My name is Sammy Thunder. Welcome back to another edition of For Collectors weekly video. And tonight I am kind of continuing on my quest to better understand bargain bin box hunting, what it takes to do it. I started this whole thing on my own personal channel and I was going to continue it, and I still plan on continuing it. But I'm going to carry it into here on For Collectors on this collaborative video tonight. Who better to bring on than connoisseurs of the bargain bin boxes? My co-host from Cardboard and Cold Ones, Jason from Everyday Card Collector, and also Aaron from Value Vintage Cards. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Sammy, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
Hello.
So,
Gentlemen, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was actually, so I was asking Jason who would be a great additional person to bring on the show for this talking about bargain bin boxes, and he mentioned your name. And to be honest, the first thing I thought was like, that's kind of surprising, because I thought, I know Aaron, Aaron has Grand Slam stuff. And so I imagine, he's looking at the display cases first and foremost and primarily, but I like the variety. I like the versatility in your preferences here. So I want to know just how much, so what are you finding? What are you seeing? What are you looking for in bargain bin boxes?
So, and I know you're kind of keeping this at a wide range. I don't have as many shows near me, unfortunately. So, Strongsville, this year I'll hit the Nationals. So I don't get as much of that exposure. And I grew up doing flea markets and things, so you kind of had a limited pool, a couple of guys at the flea market you might talk to. So for me, it's the local card shop. And I've found when I stop in there, I just want to keep that relationship going. Every couple months I stop in, and you're just going through. A lot of it's the nostalgic stuff of when you were a kid. For me, I was buying cards in 84, 85, 86, and then big at the peak of all the cards that we have way too many of. But when I go in there and I see like an 81 or a 78, I'm like, oh, it's right before. Those are like the cool cards, and you get them for less than shipping. So when you form that relationship, and sometimes it's just about that too. It's about cultivating that relationship. So that's a big thing for me.
And when you're at some of these bigger shows, when you start looking through these bargain boxes, is there anything in particular that you are looking for?
For myself, sometimes it's the completing player runs. Sometimes I have a checklist. I'm trying to find the random, I almost say like misplaced card where it's a $20 card. You can find it for $5 because they just want to move it. And other times it's just being open-minded and seeing what's there. Sometimes you're not looking for a card. I picked up a Ken Boyer at a show, and I had zero desire, zero intention, but I was flipping through. I was like, that's a cool one. And it was like $4. Who's not doing that? So I picked it up.
He belongs in the Hall of Fame, by the way.
Right.
So Jason, I know in particular, you love digging through bargain boxes. I know you're also a collector of versatility, because I saw what you bought at the National, man. You were looking in those display cases, and you bought that Ted Williams card. So. Yep. But at the same time, you're also open to looking through the bargain boxes and finding something that you wouldn't normally see. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so as far as my thoughts with shows, particularly larger shows, like Strongsville is not a large show, but it's a multi-day show. And the National obviously is quite large. We have one here in Chicago called the Sports Spectacular, Philly show, things of that nature. If I'm going for multiple days, my strategy is actually set aside for one day, if not more, to bargain box dive, if you will. We all, this is a big community, and we all talk about collecting vintage and we're searching for those big cards, and we've gone on the craze of, there were videos made of saving for the big card, and I'm one of those guys who's saving for a big card potentially at Strongsville. But at the same point in time, depending on how you collect, I collect everything. I collect modern to pre-war, and I want a well-rounded collection. Well, the best way to do that is through bargain bin boxing and diving. I'm not independently wealthy. So if I can go through a bargain bin box at a show, or I can go to a bargain bin box at a local card shop, and I can pick up some cool cards on the cheap. And when I say on the cheap, much like Aaron said, $1 to maybe $5, maybe at some of these bigger card shows, you're flipping through a $5 box or a $10 box. I've told the story several times, but it's kind of ingrained in my head. The national I met you at, Sammy, 2 years ago in Chicago, before I had the channel, I went to the national, and I typically don't have plans for card shows. I tried to have one at this last national, and it went out the window very quick. But I went to the national in Chicago, and I bought what was a big card for me, the 56 Mantle, in like the first 20 minutes I was there. Well, the purpose of me being there, besides looking at cards, was going to the meet and greet and meeting everybody. And I bought that card at like 10 in the morning. And the meet and greet was at like 7 in the evening. And I wasn't going to drive home. I'm about a half an hour away. I wasn't going to drive home to come back. So I had, X amount of dollars of my budget, probably 15% of it. And so what did I do? I went bargain box diving. I picked up, I've shown them several times. This was $5, I think. 55 Ted Kozlowski, so that was, that was a bargain bin dive, if you will. I did pick up another graded card, which I didn't consider. It was in a case, the 50 Ralph Kiner, Bowman 50 Ralph Kiner. But then I picked up this, which is a Bob Gibson Super 70, and I think this was $10. So I think this was 10, and I believe the Kozlowski, the Kozlowski was 5. So between these two cards, I was down to X amount of dollars and able to pick up 2 fantastic cards. One, just an incredible bat, and one of the Hall of Fame pitchers and one of the best pitchers ever to do it. So you can build your collection in that fashion. And I think as we go through all this and we start showing more cards, people will be surprised what you can get in these bargain boxes. It's amazing. And I haven't found any super duper gems, but I know for a fact I watched, and I don't know how long ago the video was. It was Greg at Midlife Sports Cards. He was bargain bin box or bargain box diving, and he pulled out a 50 Ted Williams, a Bowman 50 Ted Williams. I think he got it for like $80, $90, maybe $100. But I'll take any 50 Bowman Ted Williams in any condition. I mean, that's how I collect. That doesn't need to be in peak condition for me. So, but we'll go through this. And my strategy, though, at shows, and typically even at the smaller shows, Sammy, is that is part of the show is bargain bin diving. I'll comb through all the cases first, and then I'll do a little deep dive after that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you dedicate, if it's a multi-day show, you said you dedicate an entire day to doing it?
Yeah, so strong. Well, it's typically based on funds, right? So you go to Strongsville, and or when I went to Strongsville, I picked up some pretty big cards, and I was down to, I still had a decent sized budget, but then at that point in time, I'll kind of refocus and say, okay, now I want to find cards on a budget. You graciously knew that one, and I didn't bring any of those cards. You graciously knew one of the dealers, and he's got a box specifically set up for you and B-Roth and a few others. And I went through there and found some amazing cards for my 56 Hall of Fame run. So, I mean, that was perfect. I actually at Strongsville, I found this. This was $4, I think I got it for. 1970 Louis Aparicio. And it's in really good shape for $4. Will I grade it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's a Hall of Famer, part of his run. It's fantastic.
Yeah, there's definitely, when you get down to the nitty gritty of your funds for the day or for the time that you're there, I'm kind of taking it in as we speak right now. There's something to be said about having your last $20 to $50 or however much you have, and going through those boxes, and it's really just a whirlwind because you have no idea what you'll find. And there are some, depending on the dealer, you go to somebody's table and you look through a box. I mean, these guys might have like $1,000 cards in their showcase and really just don't put a lot of emphasis on their cards that book for like $100, but they sell, they're selling it for 20, $30. And it was Garrett from Ballpark Memories who mentioned that. I asked him when I did something on here on For Collectors with him and this kid Micah. They're both young dealers, and I asked him. I said, "What do you look for when you're buying cards for your inventory? How do you know where to look? And he said, well, if you're starting out and you want to buy mid-tier cards for a good buck, look for the really high-end dealers and see if they have a big bucket of cards, because you'll probably find that they'll have like a Willie Mays in there in low grade, and they'll sell it for like $20-$30. So it's interesting to kind of hear that. So let's talk a little bit about approach. Like, how much time are you going to spend at a particular dealer's table? What are the telltale signs of good versus bad in terms of these circumstances? So Aaron, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
And can I shift that? It's
sure. Yeah, take it any way you want.
And it's only because it's more like card shop.
Sure.
So my card shop locally has a nice array of vintage, and they have, if you're trying to complete a 57 top set, they've got boxes of commons and things. Lots of that prime 50s, 60s vintage stuff. And then he's got boxes of low grade, which is where I live my life. Low grade, ungraded. I'm like, yeah, toss me that. I'll take those stacks, those boxes. He's got boxes of oddball stuff. So I just go in there and I shift through, and normally I'm taking in, $20, $50 a quarter, and I'm trying to see how much I can do. So I'm pulling out stacks. I've got stacks in front of me. I'm like, all right, let's wheel and deal. And then usually by the time I take everything up there, I'm like, all right, it's worth 80. What can you do for me? And be like, yeah, throw me 50, get out of here. So,
wow.
Yeah, he's usually very generous on the deal. So some of the stuff I'll show you, I keep a lot of the price tags on it just so I can look at it and see, like, it says 25 cents, but odds are I probably paid 16 cents for it. You can't get that card shipped to you ever. Like, this is, and they're not classic vintage stuff, but who doesn't want something like that? The price on it's a quarter. It's George Brett. It's silliness. So for me, that's a lot of, and I have a whole stack. This is what I'll do is I'll just go in there and I'll say, hey, I've got all this, it's $22. And it'd be like, call it 15. And it's all that prime. I'll show a few of these just so we can show some cards, but 85 Fleer Mattingly, 85 Fleer. So those will be like in his normal, just cheapo box. Jason, we gotta represent some.
There we go. The greatest Hall of Famer of all time.
Yeah. And even if he's the weakest, he's still a Hall of Famer. So
right.
Right. But 50 cents, come on, so I probably paid 32 cents for each. Like, I can't get that shipped to me on eBay. Right. And then you get these things, we've talked about those, like, is that, rare, unique, and some of these childhood cards, Will Clark, just crazy stuff. I'm trying to see, how crazy is that? Danny Ainge cards, a quarter. So those are like 17 cents. So it's not always about getting the Ty Cobbs and Walter John. Sometimes it's cool just to have a Danny Ainge card for 17 cents.
Right.
And for me, a lot of it is that forming that relationship, because next time I go in, I'm getting a little better discount. I'll show a couple later where, he was texting me and saying, like, hey, I got some stuff in that I think you like. Interest in this? I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you got that.
Yeah, I think that's the reason I called you for a particular episode that you had. So we'll save that for the end.
Yeah. So I'll show that in a bit too. But a lot of it is I've been going in there for a year and a half, 2 years, and just drop $50 a quarter, $100 here and there, and you have that relationship, some good chatter, good guy.
And I think you'll find, much like you said with your local or your LCS, the same happens at card shows, Sammy. So like if you are, and you know this, you've dealt in cards, if you're digging through a box, typically the more that you pick up, the less you're going to get it for, right? I mean, and they may have it marked $1, $2, $3, and you come out to $27, or let's say you came out to 47, you had enough, he might throw it to you for 30 or $35. That is much like Garrett had said, that's just inventory they don't think much about.
Right.
Doesn't mean much to them, and that's where the value's had. You can occasionally find a big card. I've never, this one I got at a card show. It was for $8. I think he had it at 10. I got it for 8, and this was a bargain bin. And it's nothing monstrous, but that's Mickey Mantle on the card. So
yeah,
for $8, what how do you not buy that? So
especially unmarked.
Right. Being a checklist unmarked. There you could throw in deals. I purchased in a smaller card show here. I purchased a 1962 Ernie Banks. I think it was in a 6, if I'm not mistaken. And kind of to sweeten the pot, he actually was sorting through cards, and he had this right in front of him. And I said, throw that in for X, and then we'll make the deal. And it's the 64 Billy Williams. So, was going to hit his bargain bin, and he had no intention of putting that in his display case. So, so both LCS and card shows, it's a great way to find you can find some great cards particularly if you're a player run guy, or if you're building a set. It's not it's a great way to go, particularly for sets. And I'd say maybe 70s, and at this point in time 70s and 80s. Like you were showing, Aaron, you can pick that stuff up sometimes for $0.25 or 50 cents and just load up. Believe it or not, I didn't bring any. It's another way I collect modern. So everybody's looking for the 1 of 1, the 1 of 10, the refractor, the superfractor, the kaboomy. Everybody's looking for that. Well, I'll go into, these modern guys treat the standard base rookie card like it's nothing. So I'll go in and buy 3 Ellie De La Cruz cards for $1.50. Or $2. Or there is a card here, and I forgot to bring it. Anytime I go to a card show and I'm bargain box diving, it's the 1991 Upper Deck Michael Jordan versus Magic Johnson. If it's in a bargain box and it's $3 or less, I buy it. That's the only card in the world I buy multiples of, and then I give it away. I give it away to kids or something. That's just a beautiful card of 2 incredible players, and I just hand it out as gifts. So.
Just want to say, I apologize if it's coming through on the audio. There's somebody upstairs. My neighbor upstairs is doing some sort of using a power saw or something upstairs. I don't know if you're hearing it, but if you are, I apologize. But I
thought you were snoring when I was talking, Sammy. That's all.
Yeah. It'd be quite the feat, but my God, at like 8:30 at 8:45, you would not think that they'd be doing that, but lo and behold.
Sure.
21st century after all. But this it really goes to show, like, you never know what you're going to find. I found there's one card in particular that collectors don't seem to, I don't have it, but the ugliest card that people say is the Brooks Robinson 58 Topps. And I'll be honest, I find that in bargain bin boxes all the time.
What kind of shape are they in, Sammy? Because I don't have that, and I have never seen that in a bargain.
Yeah, these are generally wrinkled or creased or off center, and they're going for like $15-$20.
That's great.
In that condition, yeah. So to kind of go and but it's interesting you guys mentioned set building or player runs. If these are guys that are not completely on your radar and you are thinking, well, this player is not really on my radar, but I don't have this card, and maybe I'll buy this for $10, $15-$20, and it'll act maybe as a filler even during the interim. That's a great point, and I think that's definitely true. I would say probably a lot of bargain bin box hunters or set builders or player collectors. and they'll try to fill in gaps for cheap, because Brooks Robinson, for example, may not be on the top of their list, but they want to complete their run, and so why not? They don't want to spend $150 on a really top-notch 58 Brooks. They want one for 15, $20. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I know we're not, it's not necessarily pumping or pushing other channels. If you've ever had a chance, and I know you both have watched them. G's Mikey,
Show me,
he's
yeah.
a set collector,
Mhm.
and when he goes to a show, and even when he buys online, it's all in lots. It's all, and he's got an equation in his head. I want to spend X amount of dollars on this set per card, and he'll go to the show, and if he sees a guy who's just extremely overpriced, he does the he puts a little editing into that.
Oh, it's so funny. I love it.
Like, that's
So
insane.
funny.
Yeah. So I mean, I have to. We've all been to the shows.
Mhm.
We were at Stan's table at the National, and he's got his. I wouldn't say they're bargain bin boxes. This is more or less for set collectors. He's got his binders out there. And it's 5-6 people deep, just rolling through cards, picking out commons and doing their thing. So I know it's straying away from a little bit of the bargain box, but set collectors do the same thing.
So I'm going to say this. I like Stan's table a lot, but he has a bargain bin box, and it's filled with great stuff. But what makes it confusing is that he puts it at 60% off the marked price. Now listen, I can do the math. It's not the problem. But when you have a card that's like $45 or anything that's not a zero at the end, you have to start like thinking in, like how much am I at so far? I would say 60%. It's a great discounted number, but it's not as easy to calculate. You're 75.
Sticker price was $37.85, and you're going to get 62% off of that.
It's just, I get it. These are cards that he probably, either tried to sell at one point and just couldn't move them for the price he originally set them for, because they do have original marked prices. So there are sticker prices on them. They just take the discount off of it. So the easy ones are like, if they're marked 100, you pay 40. So easy.
Right.
But when they're like 165, it's like, oh man, okay,
math.
Let's do this. Half of 165. Let's do the 50% part first.
Right.
And then add the 10%. No, listen. I mean, and I've actually picked up. I picked up the 52 Monty Irvin. He had a really nicely centered one in there. That was, it's not great condition, but I paid $40 for it. And so, I thought it was a decent card, and it was one of those bargain bin boxes cards that I picked up during the National, not this past year, the year before.
I think it's important to understand like how you collect too, right? I mean,
sure.
Bargain bin boxes can be your best friend in the world. If you're collecting for aesthetics of the card and you just want the card and that number on that piece of plastic doesn't mean anything to you, you will be a lifelong bargain bin boxer like myself and like Aaron. If you if the number means everything to you and that's part of your gig, and there's nothing wrong with that, I'm not downplaying it. I want nice cards too, but if that number is really important to you, then I don't know how crucial or how much time you're going to be spending in bargain bins. If you're breaking out a loop and breaking out a light every time you look at a card, and I'm not picking on anybody, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that that's your MO, then bargain bin boxing or diving might not be your thing. It might not be your way to go. Don't take a loop to something that he's got marked at 70% off and it was originally $20, because I guarantee you there's going to be some flaws in that card. So
it's very true. And so that kind of goes into some of the next topics is how much time are you spending at a particular table? If you're going to a show, like how do you know immediately if you go to a table and you see these bargain bin prices are ridiculous? Are you even bothering diving in, or do you just jump into the next, or do you just go to the next table and try to find prices that are worthwhile?
I'll let you go, Aaron.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say to me it's like speed dating for cards. I mean, to me it's I'll walk into a table and they're everything's retail price plus 10%. Like I'm not. Or the prices aren't marked. That's another, big. I know that's been a topic. That's a big turnoff because you're going through. You're like, there's a line, there's people, it's busy, and now I got to discuss what he wants, and he has to probably look it up, and he's going to comp it, and I want something that where I can see like, okay, it's a good deal, it's a quick deal, and even at the card shops, I'll do that. I'll grab a box and it'll say just like oddball or low grade, so I'll grab it and look through, and I'm like, all right, he's got a bunch of it's commons. It's not anything I'm looking for. It's all late 80s. I want early 80s and back. So I just spend 2 minutes and then move on, go grab something else. That's at least my theory. There's too much out there.
Yeah, I think I mean, when it comes to, so I'll show what this one card, there's a guy who sets up at all the big shows, Philly show. I think he's at the Philly show. No, he's not at the Philly show, but he's at the county center show, the East Coast National. I don't think he's at Strongsville, but he was at the National. And I'm going to show this. Hold on. Let me switch over to the screen here. So what he does, and I take it back. He was at Strongsville. What he does, which I really like, this guy has a stack of these lower graded Hall of Famers, and he'll put like Post-it notes on them. So on the front, they'll say like Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Jackie Robinson, Ernie Banks, all the big names are stacked there, and he'll show like what their original price was, and then he'll show what he wants. And like I ended up buying like a Carly Stremski rookie off of him for like $100, and it ended up great. I think it got graded like a 4 or 4.5, which is great. There had like Willie May, I bought a Willie Mays from him, but this was kind of like more recent. I bought the side panel of the Transagram from him.
What are those? I've never heard of those cards.
So these are on the box.
I'm kidding.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally missed. Yeah, you never heard of those. But I bought this from him. He had this in a stack of like 60 Hall of Famers, like in the same sort of rubber band system that he had. And this guy has like he has display cases of his graded high-end stuff, raw high-end stuff. But off to the side are these like, it's really appealing. And he also has a bargain box of lower graded Hall of Famers. I like his table a lot. And next time when we go to Strongsville, I'll point him out because I think you guys would have fun with this table. But I picked this out. It was $20, and I brought it over to him, and I said, "Hey, would you take 15?" And I remember his reaction because he was like, "Huh, I didn't think anybody would pick that up." Or no, I'm sorry, no, he's like, no, he didn't say that. He said he was surprised that nobody picked that up because people that love the Transagrams or the oddball stuff always love go for the side panels. So he's like, you don't see these too often, but he reluctantly gave it to me for $15. And
they do grade those, if I'm not mistaken.
They do, but yeah. I'm leaving this one alone. I'm gonna let
right.
I remember, I forget who it was. Maybe it was Mangini who was like, "That's ridiculous. Why would you?"
Yeah, that drives him nuts. That they're grading that people are cutting out side panels and grading them.
Well,
I can honestly tell you of the cards that I've got a stack here, and I didn't even think about it. There are quite a few that I have ended up grading. The ones that I got at Strongsville from the dealer you knew. Mm-hmm. There was a card I've shown on my channel a couple of times. And this is another advantage to bargain box diving and choosing particular dealers. So at a smaller show, it's much easier to do this than it would be at like Strongsville or the National or Philly. This show that we have here is monthly. It's the first weekend of every month. I was bargain bin box or diving through a guy's box, and he had mostly modern. And I ended up pulling out 56 Pee Wee Reese in pretty decent shape, and I don't have it with me. And he didn't have it marked. And I said, "What do you want for it?" And of course, he had looked up comps, and I think he said 40. And I said, "Well, listen, I'm picking apart the card. I'm like, there's a little mark here above his eyebrow, and there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that." and I think I ended up getting the 56 Pee Wee Reese for $35. I sent it to SGC and I got a 5.
Wow.
So I was like, all right, I guess that's a home run for me.
Yeah.
But I think, well, the only one that I did bring that I have graded, I got this out of my local LCS bargain box for about,
Oh, wow.
I think it was $11. And I know the dealer, and I'm sorry, I know the owner of the shop. So he's always kind to me, much like Aaron was just saying with his with his LCS. I grabbed about 10 cards, and this was one of them. And I think I got this for 11, and then graded it, and it got a 7. So thrilled with that, But shame on me. I had a bunch that I did grade, and I forgot to bring them upstairs here. So,
well, Aaron, do you have any other cards you wanted to show from bargain bin?
Yeah, well, I was going to say I'll show you a couple, and just the other thing that I wanted to mention that I let escape me. One of the things I like about the bargain boxes is I feel like these get through. Is you get a lot of these like leaders, these combos, these, the Lou Brock and
cards.
So again,
great card.
I mean, it's $2.50.
You got that for $2.50.
So I probably got that for like $1.80. That's
a great card.
$3. So call it 2, like 3 Hall of Famers. That's insane. But what does end up happening, and the reason I think I focus so much on the relationship of it all is I walked in there and, I tell the guy all the time, like vintage, pre-war, he's like, I don't really get pre-war too often. And he had pre-war walk in. And I think this is what made Jason kind of think of it. He had this little like bargain box of things that he didn't think was good enough to send in to be graded. And it's stuff that's not in his wheelhouse. He's asking me, he's like, there's this guy with the Pirates. His name's Max Casey. I'm like, Max Carey? He's like, yeah, maybe that's it. I'm like, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. So I was helping him like figure out who was Hall of Famers. But I mean, he's got all these like extremely rough, but I mean, that's a home run Baker. Let me find a couple of prices still. That one's crazy. I mean, these were crushed. These were rough, but Eddie Seacott, that's actually a great looking card if it's in nicer shape. There's one for the Dodger fans out there. Shout out for Mark there, but Dazzy Vance.
He was a Cardinal too.
Yeah. There's a Cardinal, Frankie Frisch.
There you go. Jeez.
$30, and so I probably netted that for 20. And it's rare that he gets these things. Rube Marquardt, that's actually a pretty nice one.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess he just figured that wasn't worth sending in, but he looked it up. He's like, yeah, 60. I was probably paid $45 for it.
That's incredible.
So those were a win. And when I was going through talking about sending in for grading, I don't grade a lot of that stuff. If it's $30, I'm not going to put another 15 into grading it. For me personally, because I know it's going to come back with an A. I mean, it's real. It's not going to grade anything. It's not going to surprisingly get a 5. But in that bin, one of them that was marked for 30.
Walter Johnson.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. That was marked at $30?
Yeah. So I probably actually, I had to look through pictures. Every time I get a card, I take a picture of it and keep it like in a little like file on my phone. So yeah, that was $30. So I probably actually paid like 22 for it or something.
What does that card generally go for?
I looked it up. The last auction it went, I mean, it was a nicer A or a 1, but I think it went for $650, $700, something like that. I came out ahead on that one.
Yeah, that's a beautiful card.
That was a win. That might be one of my bigger wins, like, in life.
Yeah, like I brought up my Pee Wee Reese win, and then you just quadrupled it.
I mean, I had one more card to show, but I think that my card is torched. I was going to show this one. I guess I am going to show it. I paid 25 cents for this at a card show, and I wish I bought the whole box.
You paid 25 cents for a 71 Maze?
Yeah, I mean it's in really terrible shape.
So what? And
I wish Walter Johnson came before. I mean, if you look at the margin, look at the margin difference.
No, yeah.
$650 card versus over what 20? How much you said you paid?
Probably
20
20 something. Yeah, it was marked at 30, and I know he got something off. Yeah.
Versus like 25 cents paid for this compared to what, like maybe in this condition, maybe like $20-$30.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess it comes out roughly around the same. I don't know.
I'll give you $5 for that right now, Sammy. You can
Yeah.
make some serious money on that.
You know, I'm gonna hold. I mean, I would, but you know, there's something about like finding a card like that and having the story, and I'm like, yeah, I can't get rid of it. I can't do it.
That's phenomenal.
That's the best quarter card I've ever seen.
Right.
Oh no, you haven't seen. Hold on. Do you know about my? I know this is not bargain bin. Well, this is bargain bin box.
I know. Are we talking about the card that got you back?
The card that got me back. Do you know the
Yeah.
story, Aaron?
I don't think I do.
All right, hang on a second. I gotta open up the safe for this one.
Holy
I'm a
cow.
degenerate. All I do is watch YouTube all day, Aaron. So I know all these.
Yeah, I spoke about this a little bit on when John interviewed me for one of his more card collector to collector edition that he did here. So I'll show you this. So it wasn't graded at the time. This was I found it raw. This was before I got back into the hobby. I was in Baltimore with my wife. We were going into what we thought was a bookshop, but it turned out to be like a nostalgia shop. And inside this nostalgia shop, it had records, like action figures, and it had books in there, but it's not like your quintessential your typical bookstore. So, and then they had this cardboard box underneath all of like the rack of records, and then they had this little space, and there was a cardboard box, and inside the cardboard box were practically the entire 1981-82 Topps basketball cards. So I found the Magic Johnson, the Kareem, Larry Bird was in there, and so a Derek Jeter rookie card, like one of his Topps 93. So I brought it up to the counter. I brought this up there. I brought the Magic, the Kareem, the Jeter, and I said, "How much for these cards?" And he goes, 25 cents each. And I said, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, again, I didn't know this. I had no idea this could be. I didn't know any better, but I figured. I'm like, I looked at the back, and I knew enough when I was a kid. I'm like, well, this is definitely his second year card, so I knew enough. Like, all right, yeah, let's do it. And so, bargain, like, it's sort of a bargain bin box hunting, even though it wasn't a card shop.
Actually, it is. I mean, if he had a box, that's what that is. And
Yeah, and then
that's a huge win too. By the way, that's bigger than the Maze win.
Well, I sent it in. They came back an 8. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's my story that got me back into the hobby, is finding my favorite basketball player. So
I think it's fair to say, if you love collecting, and again, obviously everybody cares about condition. Maybe I'll rapid fire some. I have a stack here of cards that were all bought in a bargain bin, and I kind of remember the pricing. And the most expensive one will be the first one that I show, and this was $15. 51 Bowman Red Shane Dienst. This one I got for $8, and it's in good shape. 59 Robin Roberts, all bargain bin boxing. I think this was $5.
Oh man, yeah.
69 Bob Gibson. This was $4, and it's shredded, and you won't be able to see it. 55 Hal Newhouser. I got this at a flea market in Wisconsin. My guy, Sherm Lawler. 59 Sherm Lawler was a bargain box, and this was $10.
Oh wow, nice.
Game piece Hank Aaron, and there's a crease in it. You know, again, much like Aaron, this will never get graded. If I ever want a graded copy, these are fairly inexpensive, but I can say I have the card and it physically cost me $10. So yeah. I can live with that all day long.
Yeah.
It's good pieces.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Well, we're about to wrap up. Any other comments you want to mention? Any other suggestions you want to mention to anybody that watches this?
Can I share just of the relationship with that dealer and why that's so important? Because there's from going and getting all these, $10 and $15 and $20 and $30 things, he also had some bigger ones than that. And I got that. That was in his same bin.
That's the one I was thinking of, the Hornsby, Rogers Hornsby.
Yeah, this was not quite as low of a deal.
Right.
You know, and I actually helped him navigate how much that should be. But had I not been in there buying from him on a regular basis with these, you know, 69 RBI leaders, and going through and explaining what I do like and buying all those, I would have never had the opportunity for that. So I was the first one he sent a message to, sent a picture of it and said like, hey, I don't know what this is worth. What should we do? So yeah, I kind of crafted that deal, but it's the relationships. It's that, you know, good interactions, and you go in there and you drop $20 on some quarter stuff that, you know, Oral Hershiser rookie cards and stuff, and also, you know, with a Hornsby rookie card. So it's kind of fun.
That correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to ask what that card's worth because it's kind of insignificant, but there's a comma in that card, is there not?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I got a crazy deal and I paid a comma in the card. So
yeah. So
well, I think that's a great way to finish this, is that, you know, you can start off on a very small transaction for a stack of cards, have a good conversation, and then over time that leads to a certain trust between you and that dealer, and they're coming to you to kind of price something out, and you know, you're being very honest with them and forthcoming, and I think that definitely holds true. Dealers really value that in the buyer-seller relationship. So it's very true. I think that was a great way to kind of end that note on bargain bin boxes, because you never know what that leads to.
absolutely.
All right. So, yep, Jason, Aaron, thank you so much for hopping on tonight, talking about this. As you know, Jason and I will be going, we're going to be going, since this is publishing on Thursday, we're going to be going on in a couple of hours for Cardboard and Cold Ones, and we will have Tony, the Southern Collector, who has lightning in a bottle right now, it seems. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he showcases. But thank you guys so much for jumping on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you both.
Take care, guys.
All right,
Bye-bye.
see ya.